Welcome back to the deep dive.
Yeah.
This time we're going deep on the world of psychological assessment.
Assessments.
Yeah. You know those tests and evaluations that try to figure out what makes people tick?
Oh, right, right.
We're going to be going way beyond just those Scantron sheets and multiple choice questions.
Deeper.
Yeah. You actually submitted some research on this topic, and
Oh, yeah.
I got to say it's way more complex than I ever imagined.
It really is. And what's so fascinating is that it's not just about passing some tests.
Right.
It's really about understanding people, measuring their abilities and then using that information to make really important decisions that have a real impact on people's lives.
Okay, so let's dive right in. We've got excerpts from a research article
Okay.
called Test Development and Use: New Twists on Old Questions.
Catchy?
Yeah, and it was published back in 2005 in Human Resource Management.
Wow, back in 2005.
Yeah, so it's a little bit older,
Okay.
but still very relevant.
I'm sure.
The authors are Wayne F. Cascio and Herman Aguinis. Yeah, like the beer.
Okay, got it.
And they tackle some pretty meaty topics: validity generalization,
Okay.
statistical significance testing,
Mm-hmm.
how we even define good job performance,
Right.
setting those pass-fail cutoffs, and something called cross-validation.
Yeah, those are all super important.
Yeah, and all of these concepts play a vital role in making sure that assessments are used fairly effectively and ethically.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, so let's start with validity generalization,
Right.
or VG for short.
Right.
I'm curious about this. Can we really trust test results from one situation
Mm.
to predict how someone will do in a different but similar situation?
Hmm.
Like if a test works for hiring salespeople at a tech company,
Okay.
can we assume it'll also work for salespeople at, say, a clothing store?
That's the million-dollar question. And that's exactly what VG is trying to figure out.
Oh.
Basically, you take a whole bunch of studies on a particular test,
Okay.
and then you examine whether those findings hold true across different jobs, industries, and organizations.
So you're trying to find kind of those universal truths about a test's effectiveness.
Exactly.
So if VG shows consistent results across the board, then we're good to go.
Well, not so fast. There's a legal catch here.
Oh.
Just because a test works well for one company
Yeah.
doesn't give other companies a free pass to just start using it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, there's a really fascinating case.
Okay.
The Atlas Paperbox Co. case.
What happened there?
So this company relied heavily on VG evidence
Okay.
for using a general intelligence test,
Okay.
but the court wasn't buying it.
Really?
They pointed out that the company hadn't done a thorough job analysis to show why VG was actually relevant to their specific situation.
I see.
This case really underscores a crucial point. VG is a starting point,
Okay.
not a finish line. You always need to validate test results against the specific demands of your job and organization.
So VG can be misleading if it's not used carefully.
Precisely.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, what about statistical significance testing? I remember from my college stats class that finding a statistically significant relationship
Mm-hmm.
doesn't necessarily mean a test is actually useful for decision-making.
You're absolutely right. Statistical significance is just one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Imagine a weather forecast that only tells you the temperature is likely to be above average tomorrow.
Okay.
That's helpful information, but you need more context to make decisions. Like,
Uh-huh.
what's the actual temperature range?
Yeah.
How confident are they in that prediction?
Yeah, that's a really helpful analogy. So what other statistical factors come into play here?
Two key things:
Go ahead.
confidence intervals
Got
and effect size.
All right, so let's start with confidence intervals.
Okay, so a confidence interval gives you a range of possible results rather than just a single point estimate. Think of it like a margin of error.
Okay.
And then effect size tells you how practically meaningful the result actually is.
Okay.
So a small effect might be statistically significant,
Okay.
but have very little real-world impact.
So it's about looking at the big picture and not just cherry-picking the parts that are statistically significant.
Exactly.
I'm starting to see how much nuance is involved here. It's not as simple as just pass or fail on a test.
Absolutely not. And that actually leads us to another really crucial question.
What's that?
How do we even define good job performance in the first place?
That's a great question.
It is.
Because how do we measure that?
Exactly. It's the what are we actually trying to predict problem.
Right.
And it's much harder than it sounds.
I bet.
Yeah, figuring out how to measure someone's performance in a way that's fair and accurate and relevant.
Right.
It's really tough.
And to make it even trickier, isn't someone's performance likely to change over time?
Oh, absolutely.
Like someone who's a top performer now
Hmm.
might struggle later on if their job changes or,
Right.
they're going through something difficult personally.
You're so right. That's actually called the dynamism of criteria.
Dynamism of criteria.
Yeah, and it's a major hurdle when we're trying to use assessments to predict future performance.
Wow, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah,
It's like we're trying to hit a moving target.
exactly.
And I'm guessing there's even more to it than just that.
Oh, there is. We also have to consider the difference between typical performance and maximum performance.
Okay, typical versus maximum.
Right. So imagine you're taking a typing test.
Okay.
You might be able to hit 100 words per minute when you're really under pressure,
Hmm.
but your average speed when you're just doing your day-to-day work
Yeah,
might be closer to 60 words per minute.
right.
So that's the difference between your maximum potential and your typical performance.
That's a great example. So someone might ace a test on teamwork,
Right.
but still be a terrible team player when you actually see them in action.
Exactly. And it gets even more nuanced. Two researchers,
Okay.
Borman and Moto-Widlow,
Okay.
they came up with a taxonomy of job performance.
Okay.
That includes something called task performance.
Task performance.
Okay. Which is basically just getting the job done.
Okay.
And then contextual performance.
Contextual performance.
Well,
But it's-
that encompasses all of those soft skills
Okay.
that contribute to a positive and productive work environment.
Right.
Things like being a good teammate,
Mm,
going the extra mile, being adaptable, and helping others.
right.
Those are all really important.
And I bet those are harder to measure.
They are much harder to measure than just task performance.
Yeah.
But they can be just as important for success.
Absolutely. So we're talking about job performance not being just one thing,
Right.
but this multifaceted concept with all sorts of dimensions to it.
It really is.
No wonder it's so tough to get it right.
I know.
Speaking of getting it right, how do we actually decide what score means someone passes or fails?
That's a great question.
Like who draws that line in the sand?
That's the realm of cutoff scores.
Cutoff scores.
And it's more complex than you might think.
Okay.
Sometimes you don't even need a cutoff score at all.
Really? What would that be?
Well, if you're just ranking candidates from highest to lowest,
Okay.
you don't necessarily need a specific pass-fail point.
Okay, that makes sense.
But when you do need cutoff scores, there are a bunch of different methods for setting them.
So it's not just a random number someone pulls out of a hat.
No, not at all.
Okay, so tell me more about these methods.
One common method is called the Angoff method.
Angoff.
Yeah, and basically, experts estimate how a minimally competent person would score on each part of the test.
So they're basically defining what barely passing looks like.
Exactly. And then they average all those estimates together
Oh,
to
totally.
create the cutoff score.
Okay.
Another approach is called the analytical judgment method,
Okay.
and that uses actual work samples.
Oh, so instead of just guessing how someone might score,
Yeah,
you're looking at actual examples of their work.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that helps create more concrete and objective standards.
I like that.
But here's the thing. There's no one best way to set these cutoff scores. The ideal method really depends on the specific test, the job, the context.
So it's all about finding the approach that makes the most sense for that particular situation.
Exactly.
Okay, so no magic formula for cutoff scores.
Yeah.
It all comes back to using good judgment and choosing the right tool for the job.
I like that.
Now, let's say you've developed a test
Okay.
and it's working great for one group of people.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know it will be just as accurate for a completely different group?
That's where cross-validation comes in.
Cross-validation.
Yeah, and it's all about making sure that our prediction models, those relationships between test scores and job performance,
Right.
actually hold up in the real world.
So it's like making sure our test can walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
Exactly. We need to see if it translates to different situations and populations.
Okay.
There are two main strategies for cross-validation.
Okay.
Empirical and statistical.
All right, let's start with empirical.
Okay, so empirical cross-validation involves taking your model and testing it on a brand new sample of people
Mm-hmm.
to see if it still accurately predicts their performance.
Okay, so real-world testing.
Exactly. And then statistical cross-validation uses formulas
Okay.
to adjust for things like sample size
Right.
and the number of predictors in your model.
So it's a bit more theoretical.
It is, but research has actually shown that it can be surprisingly accurate.
Interesting. So we've got real-world testing and we've got these statistical adjustments.
Right.
Both make sense in their own ways. But did it surprise you that a study way back in 1985
Mm-hmm.
found that only 5.5% of published research articles even bothered with cross-validation.
It's shocking, isn't it?
It is.
It really underscores how often this crucial step is just completely overlooked.
Wow.
Cross-validation is essential for making sure our tests are reliable
Right.
and actually useful for making real-world decisions about people.
It definitely seems like an important safeguard.
Yeah.
One thing that keeps coming up for me is that there's no one-size-fits-all answer when it comes to these psychological assessments.
Absolutely. It's about understanding the nuances, the context, and the specific goals that you're trying to achieve.
Right.
Assessments are powerful tools, but they need to be used thoughtfully, critically, and without making assumptions.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. We need to move beyond these simple pass or fail labels and really delve into what these assessments can tell us about a person's potential and how we can use them to help people thrive.
I love that.
And that brings me to a big question I've been wanting to ask. With so many ways to measure people, what do you think is the most important quality to look for no matter what the job is? What's that one thing that really makes a difference?
That's a great question, and it's something I think about a lot. While specific skills and knowledge are obviously important for different roles,
Right.
one quality that really stands out to me as a predictor of success across the board is learning agility.
Learning agility.
Yeah.
I've heard that term before,
Yeah.
but to be honest, it always sounded a little vague to me.
Yeah.
What does it actually mean in practical terms? Like, how would you explain it to someone who's never heard of it before?
Okay, so think of it as the ability and willingness to learn from experience,
Okay.
to adapt to new situations, and to apply that learning to future challenges.
So being flexible.
Exactly. Learning agile people are curious, they actively seek out feedback, they're open to new ideas,
Right.
and they're not afraid of making mistakes because they see them as opportunities to learn and grow.
So it's not just about being smart. It's
Yeah.
about how you approach learning and growth.
Exactly. It's that growth mindset we hear so much about.
Right, exactly. And in today's world, things are changing so quickly
All the time.
that ability to learn and adapt is more valuable than ever.
Couldn't agree more. Technical skills can become obsolete really quickly, but learning agility,
Yeah.
that's a transferable skill that can benefit you throughout your entire career.
No matter what you do.
Exactly.
So how can we actually measure learning agility? Are there specific assessments designed to do that?
Yes, there are. Some assessments directly measure learning agility through different tasks and scenarios.
Oh, interesting.
So they might give you a complex problem
Okay.
and observe how you approach it, how you gather information, and how you adjust your strategy as you learn new things.
So it's very hands-on.
It is. And other assessments focus on those personality traits
Okay.
that are associated with learning agility,
Okay, like what?
like openness to experience,
Mhm.
intellectual curiosity, a growth mindset, and a tolerance for ambiguity.
I like that.
Yeah. And those traits often indicate someone who's comfortable stepping outside their comfort zone
Right.
and embracing new challenges.
So if someone scores high on learning agility, does that automatically mean they're going to be a superstar employee?
Well, it's not a foolproof guarantee,
Right.
but it's a pretty strong indicator.
Okay.
Remember, assessments are just tools.
Right.
They provide valuable information, but they're not crystal balls.
Yeah.
Learning agility is a fantastic predictor of potential, but other factors like work ethic, motivation, and cultural fit,
Of course.
those also play a role.
It's about using these assessments responsibly,
Absolutely.
alongside other information, to paint a more complete picture of a person
Exactly.
and to make good decisions.
Well said.
This has been so eye-opening. I used to think of these assessments as just these rigid pass or fail tests.
Yeah.
But now I see them as tools for understanding people's potential and helping them grow and succeed.
I love that.
We've gone beyond those surface-level assumptions and really explored the complexities of these psychological assessments,
We have.
from the legal challenges of validity generalization
Right.
to the art of setting those cutoff scores
Mm-hmm.
and the importance of considering things like confidence intervals and effect size.
It's all connected.
And we even talked about the surprising power of learning agility,
One of my favorites.
that ability to adapt and learn and grow that's so essential in our world.
Couldn't agree more.
So here's a final thought for you to ponder. If you could create your own ideal assessment, what would it measure? What qualities or skills would you prioritize?
That's a tough one.
I know, right? It's something to think about.
It is.
Let us know. Till next time, keep on learning and stay curious. It's deep dive time.
It's been a pleasure.